Alright, so that's it for our network infrastructure services. We talked about DNS, DHCP, NTP, and directory services. Now let's talk about some of the other services that servers can be used to provide. As we've stated before, one of the most common services is the web service, or the HTTP, Hypertext Transport Protocol service. Just like all the other services, it has a network port that it's listening on. HTTP listens on port 80, while HTTPS, or HTTPS SSL, is listening on port 443. Most web servers are simply file servers, and they listen for an HTTP request and respond with a set of files that comprise a web page. Usually a text file of HTML, maybe a CSS file, some image assets, maybe video, audio, etc., but it essentially provides that service. Now, there are some languages, such as Python, that can run server-side and produce web content or provide an enhanced web experience to the user, but use resources on the server side to do the computationally intensive tasks. Along the same lines as web servers are file servers, which are really a more generic version of the web server. The web server is a very specialized form of file server. A file server is simply a service that offers the files on the hard drive to a remote location. Windows uses SMB, or server message block, in order to share files and folders on a particular computer. Linux has a similar system called Samba, which is essentially its version of SMB and can be used to connect to SMB, or Windows shares. If you want a Linux-specific network file service, you can use NFS, which is the network file system, and it's specific to Linux, and it allows Linux to access files and directories on another device as though they were on the local device. Of course, there are a myriad of higher-level application layer network file systems that offer similar services, but offer it at the application layer rather than a lower layer like these other services do. For example, Microsoft OneDrive, Google Drive, etc. allow users to store data on a cloud server, and one of the modern features of that is synchronization, real-time synchronization between a computer and something out in the cloud. Cloud storage, file servers is a very large piece of the server industry today. Another service that servers can offer is an application service. Oftentimes, this is as simple as data access for a particular application. For example, a financial application like QuickBooks may store its company file, or the file that includes all of the financial data for a company, on a server. And in order to allow concurrent access to that file, the server will manage the connections to that particular piece of data to make sure that changes don't overwrite one another and happen in the correct order. But other applications can use servers either as a computational device or a mediating device between other clients, or as a way of connecting resources. For example, a game server allows multiple client computers to participate in the same online game, while the server mediates the connection between all of those clients and makes sure that all the clients receive the information that they need for that game to run smoothly. Another very common service is the mail server. Now, the email service allows emails to be sent, received, stored on a server. Now, since its inception, there have been several different types of email service. SMTP, one of the originals, stands for Simple Mail Transport Protocol and listens on TCP port 25. After SMTP came POP3, the Post Office Protocol. POP3 works on TCP port 110. And the most common protocol today is the IMAP, Internet Message Access Protocol, which works on TCP port 143. Now, all of these TCP ports are technically unsecured or unencrypted ports. Most email services today will actually use an encrypted version of IMAP or POP3 or even SMTP, whether that's port 443 for SSL or some other custom port to enable encryption. A service that's used frequently in the enterprise world, but very rarely in small business or in most people's day-to-day experience, is that of the print service. The print service allows multiple printers to be managed from a single location. For example, if you have a lot of people printing documents and you might have 4 to 8 printers in a room, but you're not quite sure which printer is going to be free at any given moment, a print server allows users to send a print job to the print server. The print server will then check to see which printer is not in use and print the job out on that particular printer. Windows has a print server called the Windows Print Service, and Linux has CUPS, or the Common Unix Printing System. While not technically a network infrastructure service, a couple of services that fall into the networking category are that of routing, network address translation, port address translation, and VPNs. It is possible to configure a server as a router. Now, typically we think of a router as a networking device that connects logical networks, but really if you think about what it's doing is it's simply passing traffic from one IP network to another, and a server can be configured to do exactly that. Especially a server that can assign IP addresses on both of those networks and do network address translation, or translate from a logical network address on one network to a logical network address on another. A specialized case of that is VPNs, or virtual private networks. Now typically in order to have a virtual private network or a tunnel across the public internet between two locations, we need devices on either end that understand how to encrypt a message, send it across, and decrypt it on the other side, and vice versa. So typically we're going to use VPN servers on either end of that conversation in order to create that encrypted tunnel and send the traffic on to either side. Imagine a corporation that has two buildings in two different geographic locations, but they want all of their users to be able to access all the shared resources, such as shared files, at both locations. They of course don't want to spend the money to put a dedicated fiber line all the way across the country between those two geographic locations. And so they're going to use the fiber that's already in place, the internet. They set up a server on one side that acts as a gateway between all of the devices in this geographic location and the internet, encrypting all that traffic to send it over to the other geographic location, where another VPN server, which is connected in conversation with the first VPN server, decrypts all of that information and puts it on the local network in this geographic location, and sends information back the same way. Many companies will also use this for telecommuting or remote desktop users who want to connect into the office or get access to office resources from their home or another location while they travel. A VPN allows those devices to essentially exist in the local area network using the public network as the conduit between that distant location and that internal network. Alright, so that was a big tour of a lot of different services that servers can offer. Everything from network infrastructure to application servers, web servers, file servers, directory services, and networking in general. Now, remember the question that I asked you to think about in the last video was, what good is a computer without a keyboard, monitor, and mouse? And now as we've gone through some of these services, I want you to start thinking about the different roles that a server might play and consider whether or not a keyboard, monitor, mouse is useful in any of those instances. Now, DHCP, DNS, VPN servers, web servers, etc., most of those are set and then they run with the settings that they are given. And they don't need interaction on a regular basis to change things. So a keyboard, a monitor, mouse doesn't really serve a purpose on something like a DHCP server. Yes, you have the initial setup that you need to do, but once that setup is complete, except for maintenance from time to time, there's no real reason to use a keyboard, monitor, mouse on that computer. In fact, most of those types of services are going to offer some form of browser-based or remote desktop-based configuration capability so that we don't actually have to interact with the individual hardware. And so you'll see that the usefulness of a keyboard, monitor, mouse on a server offering some of these services is negligible. So servers are not going to use keyboard, monitors, and mice because they simply don't need them. Now that you know a little bit more about the services that a server can offer, I want you to start thinking about the final project. Now, in the final project, you are going to be designing a data center, a large amount of computers all grouped together in a single building, offering services and charging money for those services. And I want you to start considering which of the services we've talked about would be appropriate for use in that data center. In other words, what services could you offer from a data center location that would be valuable to a customer and that you could charge money for? I'll give you one example right now, and that is web servers. There are tons of companies out there that offer web hosting services at a monthly fee. Maybe look into some of those and consider how much it would cost to build your own server to offer that service and whether or not it would be profitable for you to do so.